And we're now joined by O.H. Skinner from the Alliance for Consumer Action. And actually, O.H., your team actually brought this to my attention. So we're talking about the lawfare theme. Like I said, we tend to get caught up in all of the national drama and soap opera over this, but this is a very real thing that happens at an activist level that isn't necessarily about personalities. What's going on in Missouri that's going to try to insulate this while still allowing the courts to be what they should be?
Right. Well, thanks for having me on. I mean, what you've got is a bunch of activists who figured out that they're losing at the ballot box, just like you said, and they figured out that they can go to court to set up a system where they start to lock in their progressive, lifestyle choices. So in Missouri, you've got a pair of bills that are being run. One of them is supposed to stop public nuisance lawsuits. And, I don't know if you've ever followed any of this stuff, but basically the left has a little game where they say that something they don't like is a public nuisance, climate change, nationwide gun violence is what they'll say. And then they go around and they try to take away your guns, take away your trucks, take away all of the other choices that you have, your plastic bottles, your plastic straws, under the guise of a public nuisance and a lawsuit, often by a liberal town. Right, liberal town or city. And then they have a whole new problem that we've seen, which is, they've been defunding the police. You guys have plenty of problems with that. And the prosecutors, woke prosecutors in Missouri. And they have a whole system where they basically have the criminals suing over their crimes. So if they slip and fall being a porch pirate on your property, if they try to break in somewhere and get hurt, the criminal is actually suing the homeowner or the business owner to try to make money. The trial lawyers then feed that back into politics, right? So those are two of their kind of woke lawfare methods, and it's really important that people stop it. And you're seeing that in Missouri, they're putting in legislation to protect Missouri so that it does not just that you guys win at the ballot box, you're also able to stop their courtroom antics.
Good morning, OH. This is Susie Moore. One of the big issues that seems to arise in a lot of these cases is whether or not the plaintiffs, the persons or organizations suing have standing. In these public nuisance lawsuits, is that even an issue? Are these municipalities, are they able to establish standing?
Yeah, so it's great. So they at least will be able to say that they've been hurt by something. And so then this is one of those cases where they have a little bit better standing. It's a little bit not quite as bad as the lawsuits against the Trump administration. But what they'll say is, climate change is ruining the world. I have to pay for air conditioning. You'll laugh at this. They'll pay for air conditioning on the buildings in my government buildings in my little town or my county. And so that's because of climate change. And so then they'll go and sue a big energy company and say, you have to pay for my air conditioning and you have to pay for green fitting my buildings and putting in solar panels. Right. So the problem here isn't something like, yeah, you and I would agree that they're probably not being hurt by climate change. But the real problem is that whatever's happening to them, they're trying to hold them accountable just the companies that they don't like. Mm-hmm. Right? It's just they're just picking their disfavored industries and trying to ruin them so that they can build more windmills.
Hey, OH, how do we mitigate this in a way that doesn't have that unintended consequences of eliminating the proper role of the courts, especially the civil courts and things like this? Because, there's always a fad, there's always a trend when it comes to activism and the issue of the day kind of thing. But how do we do this to keep the courts in their right role? Because part of the problem is just bad judges who are appointed by bad lawmakers. But how do we do this and keep the process insulated and in its proper lane?
I mean, honestly, you start by just thinking about how the activists are building their cases. So in Missouri, you've got this great law, the Public Nuisance Reform Act. And what it basically says is that if you're a local government, you get to sue over things that are solely located in your jurisdiction. Right? So you're not allowed to sue over global climate change. You're not allowed to sue over nationwide gun violence. You're not allowed to bring a claim that's about the same all across the country. Right? That's reserved for the state attorney general. And then you say that you're not allowed to bring these public nuisance claims over licensed lawful products. Guns are licensed, regulated, lawful products. Cars, licensed, regulated, lawful products. You're not bringing them over cars. You're not bringing them over guns. You can bring them over somebody dumping something on your property or a tree that fell or something that's local. But that way what you're doing is you're making it so that the statewide officials in Missouri are driving the ship. Mm-hmm. And you're not allowed to sue over the stuff on store shelves that people need. Right. And then on the crime thing, it's really simple. You just do it. we've seen polling, 80% of people agree criminals shouldn't be allowed to sue and make money off of their crime.
Yeah.
Right. So the law is really simple. It's so common sense, most people laugh, which is if you're a criminal, if you're a wrongdoer, you're not allowed to sue somebody for negligence because you slipped and fell on their property. Full stop. Right. That's what we think is the common sense way. And that lets regular people go to court. It lets the state go to court, but it doesn't let everybody turn court into an ideological weapon. Right. Because that's really what they're doing. Right. We call this woke lawfare. They're learning the same lessons of when they went after Donald Trump. They went after the Trump administration. You've nailed it. It's a lot easier to convince one judge or three judges than it is to convince, the normal process.
So, OH, putting my lawyer devil's advocate hat on, what's the pushback going to be on particularly the legislation regarding the nuisance lawsuits? In other words, I'm sure it's probably going to face challenges, legal challenges, just kind of circular, we're running around in circles here.
Why do you hate the children, Susie?
It's because I'm a lawyer.
I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly right. How's my county government supposed to protect me? And didn't they get a lot of money from the opioids cases? And shouldn't we be allowed to sue when the state government's not listening to us? But you and I both know that you have a pretty responsive set of state officials. And the real answer to all this is everyone would still get the same amount of money from problems. It would just be that the money for St. Louis County would flow through the state government. It would flow through the state government and it would flow through the state legislature. The same amount of money would get cut up. The local governments are really mad that they can't decide for themselves at the negotiating table at a courtroom how much money they get, that they have to go to the state and say, "Mother, may I?" Right? So their facial answer is, well, we need to be able to sue to protect our people. But the real answer is, no, you just need to go through the normal processes to get the money that you need from the state. And you don't like that. And that is not actually a thing that most people are moved by, right? Nobody wants them to not be able to protect the people in their county.
Sure.
So the lawsuit says if you have a real problem that's just in your county, you get to solve that. And if it's a statewide problem, if it's a nationwide problem, then the state does it and you need to go and figure out how to get the money from the state, right? And the second thing that I would say is, these nuisance lawsuits, we have a whole report that just came out this week called, and you can find it on endthelawfare.com. But basically, the reason that the left likes these nuisance lawsuits is because that's the only lawsuit that the local governments get to bring. If you limit nuisance, then at the statewide level, there's state consumer protection statutes that basically say you can't lie to consumers, and those lawsuits are still available. The left just doesn't like it because those are normally for the state, and the job there isn't to reshape American society. You can get fines and penalties for people lying, but you can't get what a lawsuit under nuisance can get you, which is, and ending an entire product, taking an entire thing off the shelf so that now you can't buy a gun, you can't buy a Super Duty, you can't buy a plastic straw, right? So the real, that's the response. But you're right, they'll come in and say, little town over here just can't protect their people because, the big bad legislature doesn't want them to. And the answer is they're going to get protected. It's just that, the legislature is going to give them the money.
And what's the status of these reform bills right now? Because, this is one of the more in-depth things that don't always make it to the headlines. It's important, but a lot of times it gets drowned out by the more dramatic stuff. So where is this in the process right now? Because we've got a time limit on the legislative session. If it doesn't make it through, we don't get to pick it up where we left off. They got to start over next year.
Yeah, they got to start over. It's amazing. They've been referred out to the Judiciary Committee and in the House, and they're gonna go through the normal legislative process. But this is an important push. We're making a push across the country to remind red states that if you really want to protect yourself, it's not enough to go and vote for the legislature. It's not enough to go and vote for attorney general. It's not enough to do those things. You also have to pass these laws because the left's not going to bother to try to win the legislature in Missouri.
No.
They're going to try to control the Supreme Court and the courtroom because that's their only ticket to ride, right? And so red states need to wake up and protect themselves while they're getting supermajorities, while they're winning at the ballot box, to make sure that consumers can buy the stuff that they want to buy, Somebody who's living, outside of Kansas City should not have to live the same lifestyle as a San Francisco coastal elite weirdo, right?
Fair. Yeah, without a doubt. All right, Alliance for Consumer Action. Let's put out the information if people want to connect or follow you on social media or anything like that.
Yeah, Alliance for Consumers Action, and you can look up our big report at endthelawfare.com. Thanks for having me on, guys.
You got it. We'll talk to you soon, OH.